Welcome to the Boxing Source Podcast, where we go over the latest news in boxing and react to all of the fights that happened in the past week. Now, let's go to our host, J.R. Bell. Yo, mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hopefully, you're able to hear me. What's going on, everybody? We are here for the November 2nd, 2025 edition of the Boxing Source Podcast here, checking in. We got a few things here, a few topics we're going to be talking about in this particular Boxing Source podcast. Yes, it is fight week 4. What's going on in Fort Worth, the Dallas area, as you're going to have the WBC Interim Championship on the line. They're in the 154-pound division with Vergil Ortiz Jr. taking on Eric Lubin. Okay. Now we're going to be going over that particular fight card. We also have something there from Pro Box that is scheduled for Friday night. Also, that is going to be something there to look forward to, because you're going to have an interesting fight. They're headlining that particular fight card there for Pro Box, but then we're also going to talk about the fight card that is on November 8th there in Fort Worth. We got a few fights that's going to be on the schedule there for that, right? So we got a number of things here that we're going to be talking about with that. Hopefully I'll get a couple of guests here to join in with me on this conversation. Big ups for everyone that's listening live here or watching live, whether it's on YouTube, Rumble, or Facebook. And also, for those listening, they'll be listening to the replay here. That'll be available through all podcast platforms. Appreciate y'all for supporting the Boxing Source here on that. Now, I know that there's some action over in Orlando, Florida, the other day, headlined by a heavyweight bout there that involved Lenny Aparo versus Jordan Thompson there, and where Lenny Aparo was able to get the unanimous decision win on that one. So we're going to be actually seeing if I'm going to catch up with the trainer of Lenny Aparo there, probably later this week. Okay, we're gonna have something there where I get to catch up with them and all that, because there's gonna be a few things, a few topics that I need to go ahead and catch up with him on. You know what I'm saying there, because not only does he have the thing going down there when it comes to the Pero brothers, of course, right? But we also have to see what's going down when it comes to a world champion that he trains there. Okay, and that is of course Mario Barrios. So I'm talking about Coach Bob Santos, being a former coach of the year at one point. He was out there in Orlando in the corner of Lenny Aparo. So we're gonna see if we could catch up with him as far as like being able to get his reaction to what Pero did there over in Orlando, Florida, and have some more news as far as like other fighters that he's been working with there over the course of his time, as he's based in Las Vegas and stuff like that. So you do have that that's on the plan, and also had something that was playing as far as like the past week, but with unfortunate news that was that came down in reference to the grandmother of Lamont Roach Jr., mother of Lamont Roach Sr., transitioning here, a few days ago. So we wanted to kind of scale that back a little bit. Have them, be, able to handle arrangements and things like that for that. Of course, we have Lamont Roach Jr. preparing for his bout against Isak Pitbull Cruz that is scheduled for December 6th. So I'll be able to catch up, with them here probably later on this week. Get more information on what's going down as far as the services first. So rest in power to the mother for Lamont Roach Sr., their grandmother of Lamont Roach Jr. and Jordan Roach, of course, as Jordan Roach is younger brother of Lamont Roach Jr. Okay, so all of that, that has, pretty much been on the docket, from the past week going into this week. last week, I had a conversation with the underdog Avius Griffin, as he has an upcoming bout, therefore November 14th, scheduled for November 14th at the Casilla Center. Okay. Now, of course, one of the big stories here from this past week is the uncertainty, as they say, of the event, therefore November 14th. Okay. We had recently, got news as far as like something in reference to Tank Davis. But the thing with that is that one, we pretty much will have to find out more information on what's going on with that, as far as like the lawsuits and all that type of stuff there when it came to that, right? So, with that being said, we'll kind of like see if I'll be able to share this here as far as like the live, because the most valuable promotions, they did submit a statement in reference to that. So I'm going to share that here. Of course, it's on social media, but they're also able to send it there via email there. So it says there, most valuable promotions initiated an investigation upon learning of the civil lawsuit filed against Avante Davis in Miami-Dade County on October 30th, 2025. At this time, we're gathering information and reviewing the details to ensure any decision we make is thoroughly vetted. We unequivocally condemn any form of violence and are committed to handling this matter with diligence and respect for all involved. We will make a determination on next steps once we have completed our review and consulted with the appropriate parties. Until then, we will not be commenting further there from Most Valuable Promotions. Big ups to Guy BVO Sports TV. Okay. He has some statements. And what I'll do is I'll address those on the next podcast for BVO Sports TV. Okay. I will address those on BVO Sports TV. And that will be scheduled for Monday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So you're going to have the Bison Source on BVO Sports TV. They're scheduled for 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay. I'm seeing here if I'll be able to have someone else here to join us in reference that could, speak on that subject. But, like I said, we'll have a conversation on BVO Sports TV Monday. Where we're going to kind of like address that here. But going back to the whole thing with the Tank Davis situation, of course, they had the civil lawsuit in reference to Tank Davis and his was it old girlfriend or whatever it is, and kind of like stemming from past encounters there from Avante Tank Davis. Now, a number of the incidents that were posted on there were pretty serious. Well, pretty serious. I would say very serious, right? And with that being said, we gotta be able to kind of like see what's going on and decipher that. So I wanted to see if I could try to get the thing there as far as the paperwork that was there for Tank Davis, because if I'm able to kind of like get the information, then I'll be able to kind of like talk about that in detail. But let me see here. Let me see if I probably end up going to Fox News, right? So yeah, I'm gonna go into Fox News thing or whatever it is. This thing better not do no freaking autoplay. Man, I'm gonna skip all that. All right. So let's see here. If I'll be able to share the stream on here. You know what I mean? And share the stream, but I'm gonna share the article here. This is they're on Fox News. So it says there with Davis' ex-girlfriend Courtney Russell filing a civil suit in Miami, alleging that Tank Davis, had the violence thing there at her place of employment earlier this week, according to multiple outlets. Some people, saw it on some, what do you call it, urban news outlets and that type of thing, or whatever it is, or whatnot. But continue here. Russell claims that Davis stormed into a gentleman's club where she worked as a VIP cocktail server early Monday and attacked her in a back room that did not have cameras. Davis is alleged to have dragged Russell through a stairwell, kitchen, and back exit before assaulting her in a parking garage. Russell was in a 5-month relationship with Davis before the incident, claims that there have been multiple other assaults, claiming that Davis has physically assaulted and choked her at least 4 times, and also claimed that Davis, in writing, threatened to, you know, what it is there during September. And Russell said that she is suffering from PTSD and anxiety while living with others because she does not feel safe. Um, Davis was arrested in Miami earlier this year for allegedly, so the mother of 2 of his children placed on house arrest and hit and run, all that type of stuff. Wait a minute, who the heck? Wait, oh, whoa! Time out. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. I'm sorry, y'all. Yeah, this is live. I'm sorry, but I'm thrown off. I'm thrown off. I'm thrown off. I'm thrown off. Okay. Um, for those that are watching right now live, okay, y'all can see why I'm thrown off. At least right now. Y'all can see why I'm thrown off right now. So let's see if we can get just, let's just, continue this thing. All right, here we go. He has been arrested on charges against women at least 2 other times. One of those arrests occurred less than 2 weeks before his bout against Hector Luis Garcia. Of course, that particular bout was in Washington, D.C. All right. Status of the fight went unchanged. He won via the referee technical decision during the 9th round. Davis is currently the WBA lightweight champion. Has a record, and they have the information about his draw against Lamont Rhodes Jr. that was on March 1st of this year. All right, so there goes the whole thing reference to the article talking about Tank Davis in that particular situation. The thing with me is, one, does this particular instance put the fight between him and Jake Paul in jeopardy? Within the article, it talked about multiple incidents that happened in the past, and that fights had basically taken place. I talked about this when they talked about a previous incident, what was from this year, and I said this could be not much different than when you had Floyd Mayweather, that was going to be in I guess jail for a few months or whatever it is before he had his particular fight. I think it was against Miguel Cotto at the time, but looked like it was around like a similar situation, all that type of stuff, and they were still able to have the fight take place. You got Jake Paul in this, and this is the same Jake Paul that in his last encounter, that was an actual fight, took on, as I say, Little Chavez, and we saw what happened there with Little Chavez after that fight. So this one right here, yes, there's like a lot of things involved in reference to all of this, a lot of backstory to it. But here we are. It's under 2 weeks for that particular event to take place at the Casilla Center in Miami, Florida, and there could be a lot that is affected by this. So we got to see how that is done as far as like that is concerned, right? Because there have been some talk about the event itself, and the reception for the event as it is, right? And that that could be something that would make this be like, are we sure that this is a event that people are looking forward to? You know what I mean? Folks told that it was originally slated to be in Atlanta, Georgia, but it was moved from Atlanta, Georgia to Miami. Okay. And now, I'm trying to, see what's going on here and seeing how things is looking as far as like sales. But it's gonna, like, the thing is, as far as like the tickets, I think it's picking up right now. So we'll see, how this kind of affects what is going on when it comes to overall ticket sales, because right now, the thing is kind of like filling up as far as like the tickets are concerned. But with that being said, we got to still deal with the at least the uncertainty right now of what's going on with this current situation when it comes to Devontae Tate Davis. Shout out to my guy, brother Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz and more in the building. Salute to you here. You're watching now on the Boxing Source podcast. I would say he's like the king of trivia here on YouTube, man. Y'all could check out Bruce Gas on his channel there, man. He has some great questions there when he does trivia too. So if you can be able to check him out as well, you know what I'm saying. But as I was mentioning there with the event itself, that is something that I'm kind of like looking forward to, because you got a few fights that are on that card to kind of like pay attention to, so to speak. Particularly the WBA super lightweight title being on the line there with that. You know what I mean? Because you're going to have Gary Antoine Russell going up against Andy Hirioka on that card there with, Andy Hirioka being undefeated, Gary Antoine Russell, of course, the WBA champion, making a defense against his mandatory. You're going to have Alicia Baumgartner versus Leda Baduin on this fight card. I talked about Avius Griffin. He's going up against Justin Cardona on this card. And of course, you can go back midweek report. We have Avius Griffin on. We chopped it up with him. And you got Anderson Silva that's on the card there against Chris Weidman. So we got a few things just gonna, make some moves of sorts there within that particular fight card. We just got to see what's going on with the status of the main event here. Hopefully, we get more information within the next couple of days in reference to that front. But just seeing here, if I was going to be able to get, we'll see if I can get a couple of people to kind of like talk about the situation there with Tank Davis, because, like I said, it's a real interesting situation with that, particularly given that one, coming off of what happened in March against Lamont Rose Jr. A number of fight fans wanted to see if we will be able to get him back in the ring in a rematch there against Lamont Rose Jr., but that didn't necessarily happen. And now you got Lamont Rose Jr. going up against Isaac Cruz, while you had this thing here with Tank Davis and Jake Paul, right? Now, after that, if everything kind of like gets what's not, then we'll see how that goes. We got more folks here chiming in on the live chat here, so we got like a lot of a lot of thoughts in reference to one particular fighter. But like I said, on one end, I'm going to speak more on this tomorrow. Because we got a couple of things here that's on slate for that, but I will kind of touch on what's happening this weekend here a little bit later. But I just wanted to continue here with this thing with Tank, because it's been a real interesting scenario over the past few months. Especially when it comes to what's happening outside of the ring. And the thing about it is like, if he doesn't get that particular situation squared away, there won't be anything else, as far as like any other fights down the line. I mean, another, a good number of people are like thinking that he has one foot out the door already, especially with what he was talking about even before his fight against Lamont Roach Jr. He was saying like, listen, man, like he's been in the game a long time, and like he's kind of, seeing what's going on and things like that. And that, he feels like he only had at the time about a few fights left, and then now here we are. We got the Lamar Rose Jr. fight out the way. Now we got this thing here scheduled with Jake Paul. And after that, then who knows as far as like what Tank Davis is going to do as far as like being in the ring. But you still got to figure out what's going on with this here over in Miami-Dade first. And then once that's done, then we'll see. Now my guy, YSM Sports Media in the building. He asked, "Do you think the card happens on November 14th?" Okay, I think the fight card happens on November 14th. The question is, will the main event still be intact on November 14th? Okay, um, that right now, with given what's happening, I'm unsure about that. I don't necessarily talk with people, on the inside as far as like calling them up or hitting them up and asking this and asking that. I really don't do that. But this kind of has a almost like a similar feel, so to speak, to one event that was scheduled to happen around that area sometime back. Um, it was like a few years ago that we were supposed to have a fight between Adrian Broner and what was it, Omar Figueroa, right? And this was like supposed to be at the casino over there in Fort Lauderdale or whatnot. And yo, we're getting closer to the fight, getting closer to the fight, closer to the fight, and then like I would say about what 9 or 8 days before the fight, folks were like unsure about what was going on, particularly people within the media and that type of stuff, right? Because sometimes you have expectations as far as like doing what you have to do is to kind of like what I say apply for credentials, right? And once we didn't get any information about that or any update about that, usually around the scheduled time that it would happen, then some antennas raised up, some questions were being asked, and all that type of stuff, right? And then a couple days later, we find out Adrian Broner not going to be in that fight, right? And that you had a whole thing replaced, Sergey Lipinets there to replace. So like in like a couple days later, that's when we found out the news, and then after that, that like really affected what was going on as far as that particular fight card and everything like that. This almost like seems the same way, but we'll see how things go here within the next few days. I think we're gonna get an update within the next couple of days in reference to that. I would say that it's gonna be by probably Wednesday. We get more information on that. Once we have something for like Wednesday, I would say around Wednesday, then we'll know. Okay, yeah, they're going through with the fight or whatever it is. But yeah, as of right now, yeah, I'm not all too sure. I'm not all too certain how that goes, right? But I'm here to tell you though, tickets there for the for like the ringside and all of that, those is up there, boy. Those is up there. So listen, if they have this card that goes through, that's one thing. But if they don't have the main event as it is scheduled, that's really gonna seriously affect it. We've had some things as far as like, for example, a whole fight card that got canceled due to an injury, by Sebastian Fundora. We're supposed to have Fundora versus Thurman on October 25th, but due to a hand injury suffered by Fundora, that whole fight card for Las Vegas got scrapped. You know what I'm saying? So here we got to see if you're gonna have an instance where Tank Davis may or may not be available to have that fight against Jake Paul on November 14th. Now, if he doesn't, I'm not sure that they would have something that would kind of like be a replacement of sorts. Not this time around. It's not like an instance where, like for example, with Jake Paul, when he was originally slated to fight Mike Tyson, it was scheduled to be on July of last year, right? And then you had the situation with Mike Tyson. So what ended up happening was you had Jake Paul have a whole nother event that was in Tampa. I think it was when he did that. I'll see if I could confirm that. Like it would be over in Tampa Bay, right? And when he did that, that was let me see, that was against, oh yeah, Mike Perry. Yeah, that was against Mike Perry. But I think at that time there was like a good amount of gap for him to say, okay, let's make the adjustment. Let's have this fight, go up against Mike Perry, have a whole fight card over in Tampa, Florida, and then later on down the line when we got more confirmation that the fight can happen, then you'll have the fight there against Mike Tyson. And so that's how that worked out. Here, you don't have that much time. You don't have that much time. All you can have is like something where you say, for example, have a replacement opponent. Like how they have in boxing, right? For like main events, right? You have a main event, but if there's like any instance where one of the people involved in the main event has like an injury or some type of situation, and that fight is like out, then they could have something where the replacement opponent steps in, and that's the fight that happens in place. Here, with so much money that's been invested into this event, if Tank's not available, yeah, that whole event could be either rescheduled or canceled or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So that's something to kind of like keep your eye on there in reference to that. All right, but yeah, the thing with Tank, I got to see like how that goes with him because yeah, that's like a lot to kind of like a lot to decipher. With all of the stuff that's going on with him outside the ring, it's a lot to decipher on that front, man. But he gonna have to have that stuff straight. I would tell you that he's gonna have to have all that stuff straight, whether he's gonna continue to fight after this year or not. He has to get that stuff straight, or else it won't. It might not be all too good for him, and you don't want somebody to kind of like mess all of that up just because of a you can't get something done. I would say, you know what I mean. So with that, I'll see if I'll be able to talk more about that. I was going to try to see if one of my bros is able to join in is and talk about that particular situation. But what we'll do here is we're going to transition to the next major topic on the docket, kind of like is in relation to the upcoming fight. They're in Fort Worth, Texas. You're going to have the WBC interim super welterweight championship on the line. Vergil Ortiz Jr. versus Erickson Lubin. Okay. You got Vergil Ortiz Jr. There, going in to defend that WBC interim super welterweight title there at 23-0. Erickson Lubin is there at 27-2. Lubin was actually in an interview there with Hans Themestode there for YSM Sports Media. A couple of things kind of stood out in reference to that conversation. One, Hans and Erickson Lubin might have a fight here later on. I don't know if it's going to be at the end of this year or something like that, but they might have a fight. And look, I got 500 on Erickson Lubin knocking him out. All right, so that's number one. But number two, Erickson Lubin has been talking about, hey, this is another one of those instances where a lot of people are kind of like writing them off against Vergil Ortiz Jr. Real quick though, my guy YSM says I can't see them saving this event. Yeah, man, I'm telling you, if it ain't Tank, yeah, good luck. All I'm gonna know, hey, all I'll say about that is this: for now, before I could see what's going on later on down the line, all I can say is one word: insurance. Okay. My guy L Dub in the building. What's good with you, man? What's happening? All right, let's get back to this thing here with Erickson Lubin taking on Vergil Ortiz Jr. We had the interview that was on YSM Sports Media's YouTube channel there. Erickson Lubin with Hans Themestode. And Erickson Lubin, kind of like sees this as one of those instances where, hey, they got me as a significant underdog in this fight. Even though I've been established here in the 154-pound division, I do have a couple of key wins there in the 154-pound division. And that, a lot of people are, saying that, oh, Vergil Ortiz is this and that and whatever. And kind of like goes to the last example that happened. September of 2023, Erickson Lubin was going to face Jesus Ramos Jr. in Las Vegas. And at the time, Jesus Ramos was undefeated. Okay. A lot of people were saying that Jesus Ramos at that time was a fast, rising contender. They're 154 pounds and was writing off Erickson Lubin then. And Erickson Lubin was in there, did what he had to do in order to get the decision win against Jesus Ramos. But after that, we didn't see Erickson Lubin in the ring for almost 2 years. That fight that he had against Ardrell Holmes Jr. over, at Central Florida and stuff like that, that was his first fight since that win over Jesus Ramos Jr. He was able to get the stoppage win there against Ardrell Holmes, and now he's in this position to fight Vergil Ortiz for that WBC interim super welterweight title. Vergil Ortiz, there, of course, has built his record while being in the 154-pound division. Yes, he did face Thomas Delorme. Yes, he did face Frederick Lawson. And he had that bout against Sergey Boychuk last year. It ended up being a majority decision win and having to win this year against Israel Madrimov. Of course, who was a former world champion there before losing to Terrence Crawford. Okay. And now, we got to see where he's at this particular point of his career here at 154 pounds. You got, Erickson Lubin there with the reach advantage there against Vergil Ortiz Jr. And he's there, with a little bit of a height advantage and that type of stuff. And one of the other things that Lubin said there in the conversation with Hans was that when they had that, I guess, initial face-off when they did the press conference, right, was that, they seen that Erickson Lubin looked to be, good, good size, bigger than Vergil Ortiz Jr. So that's another thing that, we got to see what's going on with that. A guy, L Dub, says, I'm guilty of writing off Lubin. It's because I don't trust K. Karoma. 2 trainers in 2 fights. I like Vergil. You know what? I don't trust him either, but I gotta ride with my Florida boy. Come on, man. I gotta stick with my Florida boy, man. Like, yo, come on, yo. I understand. Listen, L Dub, shout out L Dub, man. I understand you completely. Okay, I understand you completely with that assessment, but I gotta ride with my guy, man. Hey, listen, you see the shirt, man. You see the South Florida shirt, man. You see what it says, here on the thing there, man. You see what it says right there. It says Flow Grown, man. Florida boy, man. Hey, I gotta ride with Erickson Lubin, man. I gotta ride with Erickson Lubin, yo. Oh man, Z Pacino in the building, man. Well, what's going on with you, man? Salute to you, man. Brother Adam here says you got Vergil with the KO, although Lubin is tough. That's the thing that a few people are looking at here with this is that we got to see where Vergil Ortiz Jr. is as far as like, of course, being there in Kent with with Garcia, right, and how he's been able to hone his skills over the past year and a half. I've talked about the fight against Sergey Boychuk that Vergil Ortiz Jr. had, and kind of like he, toned up a few things in his fight against Israel Madrimov. Now, does that continue here in his bout against Erickson Lubin or not? We're seeing that. What does it say, man? I gotta agree on the coach thing too. See, come on, man. Oh my God, yo, yeah. If there's a coach, man, that a number of people can't trust, it's K. Karoma, man. Oh my God. Said ask Timothy Taylor, shout out to him, Tim in the building. Said that Chris Mannix jumped the gun on reporting that Tank is being replaced for the Jake Paul fight. I don't know, man. I don't know. Because let me see what the Mannix man said, if he had posted it on social media or what. But yeah, you gotta be you're real careful with stuff like that. So you gotta see how that goes. You know what I mean? He is, a writer within Sports Illustrated, so we got to see how that is happening. As of right now, um, let's see. I don't know, man. I don't see it. The only thing I have here from, at least on social media through Charismatics, is when he had his conversation with Eddie Hearn, and how he has the update in reference to Anthony Joshua. But as far as like anything in reference to Tank, nope, I don't see it. I don't see it, at least on his page. Feel like that. Shout out the topic in the building. He said Eric Lubin doesn't duck no wreck. Hey, like I said, he's fought some of the who's who there within the 154-pound division, and we could have had that situation there for the IBF super welterweight title, okay, with Bakum Murtazalia. But he mentioned there in that interview with Hans Themiso that, hey, we had the conversation, had the negotiations, but couldn't really have much progress. Had the thing with the purse bid, didn't really make much sense. While you had on the other side Vergil Ortiz Jr., Golden Boy, opposite of Bakum Murtazalia and main events. Main events don't really have no TV deal. They don't have really no dates. Now you got this whole thing here with Vergil Ortiz Jr., Golden Boy. They got dates, so that's the route they went. And you see what happened here with Bakum Murtazaliev. Shoot, they almost went to the 11th hour with the purse bid with Josh Kelly, who was the next in line to face Bakum Murtazaliev. But they eventually worked out something, and they're gonna have a fight that's gonna be scheduled for next year. But you see how tough it is for some fighters to get fights when either you have like a promotional company or you're under a promotional company that doesn't really have a TV deal, so they don't have the dates. So that's where you have with that. You know what I'm saying? Let's see here, man. What Adams here says, what Jake Paul has a list of guys smaller than him to fight, but hey, he also has he might have a person or two there that's on the fight card that could be a potential replacement. But the problem is that, remember, you already had a number of tickets sold for this event, and you could go on Ticketmaster. You see the prices on them joints. You see the prices on them. So it may try to, if they don't have Tank there, then like I said, it's going to be real tough to say that they will go through with that particular fight. Uh, we got a question here in reference to fight that's scheduled for November 22nd involving David Benavidez. It says Timothy Taylor here asks, can David Benavidez make weight, losing those last few pounds in Saudi Arabia without getting sick? Now, hey, I missed the whole thing with him having the workout in Miami. That was like a couple of weeks ago. So he should be in his last few weeks or so, preparing for that particular bout. Um, all I know is, as long as he's able to get there with some good time, good ample time, then he should be good. Hopefully, it's not like what happened on that week of February 22nd, where like a whole bunch of people got sick and that it almost like destroyed that whole fight card. You feel me? As you saw, like you had, what is it? Daniel Dubois out of that fight card. You could have had a couple of other ones out that fight card. You can say that Floyd Schofield Jr. Also was affected by that, but hey, I'm gonna lay my hands off of that. You feel me? So hey, I don't know, man. That's gonna be an interesting thing there, as far as like what could happen in those weeks leading into those fights there for November 22nd. Back to the joint here with Vergil Ortiz Jr. and Erickson Lubin. I kind of like mentioned it in previous either podcasts or episodes. Vergil Ortiz Jr. being a significant favorite here over Erickson Lubin. I think it was like up to like what 950 or something like that. No, 10-1, 10-1 over on FanDuel for Vergil Ortiz Jr. over Erickson Lubin. They got Erickson Lubin at almost a 6-1 underdog there. But every like all these other lines, they have Vergil Ortiz is around like a 6-1 or 7-1 favorite. Still, that's fairly significant for Vergil Ortiz Jr. Of course, having his fights that he had against Surrey Borchuk and Israel Madrimov, while you got Eric Lubin being as experienced as he is and stuff like that. So I'm telling you, this is not one fight that Vergil Ortiz can sleep on. All right. Also, coming from that conversation there that was from the interview with Erickson Lubin. Erickson Lubin did also say something in reference to, Vergil Ortiz Jr. being ranked number one in the Ring Magazine ratings. He didn't necessarily agree with that. I said the same thing when those rankings were released. You got Vergil Ortiz Jr. there at number one when he is the WBC interim champion, but you got Sebastian Fundora at number two, who is a WBC full champion. That's for starters. Okay. And for me, like Sebastian Fundora has a number of the impressive wins there within the division. 2 over Tim Tszyu, does have that win over Cordell Booker, has a win over Erickson Lubin, so that's the thing about it. So we'll see how that goes in reference to that front. Another question here from Tim Taylor. Will Boots jump inside the ring after the fight if Ortiz loses and calls out Lubin? Interesting. That's another thing that Lubin was talking about. It's like, all these people talking about, you could have, Boots and Ortiz and all that type of stuff. And, they're going to fight next year. But what about me? What about Lubin? Shout Raven in WCW. But yeah, see, it's like a number of people are writing them off, right? Even though you still had like some people within boxing circles saying, no, you can't sleep on Erickson Lubin. He could go in there, he could get the win. So he's like, I'm going in there to upset the apple cart, going in there like Andy Ruiz Jr. against Anthony Joshua over in New York City. Or I'm like, I don't know, maybe like Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson or something like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm going in there to upset the apple cart. Like everything looks like it's being built up for, Vergil Ortiz Jr. It's not that far, from where, Vergil Ortiz is from. He's born in Dallas, and now he's having his fight over in Fort Worth. And so it's almost like, hometown fight for Vergil Ortiz Jr. But, given the level of expertise there from Erickson Lubin, of course, being a decorated amateur fighter, going into the pros, was able to have the undefeated run before facing Jermell Charlo for the WBC title at the time, and was able to get himself back in the mix. Then had the loss to Sebastian Fundora, and now here we are once again. He's being doubted once again, and so he's going to see if he can go in there and prove himself once again. This time against Vergil Ortiz Jr. Now with Vergil Ortiz Jr., you got to see if he's going to be able to, go in there, stay undefeated, defend that WBC interim championship, and then see what's going to be next up for him. I know that there's been a lot of talk about potential fights for Vergil Ortiz Jr. I know that there's been talk about a thing there with Vergil Ortiz and Jerome Boots Ennis. There's where was a recent interview from Fight Hub and Marcos Villegas on Fight Hub with Oscar De La Hoya, and Oscar De La Hoya was talking about the fight between Vergil Ortiz and Erickson Lubin, but he also has some things to say in reference to Jerome Boots Ennis in that, we've been, calling out Boots Ennis this and that and whatever, and that we've been doing that. Okay. But like I said, there's something real weird about him saying that, given comments that he said in the past. So there's that. Um, ooh, he's saying this is an interesting comment here from the Tim Taylor here on this. He says nobody is talking about the Roach versus Pitbull Cruz fight. Okay. Like I was saying earlier on this podcast here, we'll see if I could get Mark Roach Jr. on for an interview. Of course, right now dealing with the passing of his grandmother. So we're gonna see if we could do something to reschedule that here. And he's supposed to be, in camp preparing for the fight against Pitbull Cruz. That's number one. Number two, you got the undercard that's very, very stacked there. Of course, you got the middleweight title unification there. Erislandy Lara versus Janibek Alhamdulillah. You have the fight for the WBC Super Featherweight Championship. O'Shaquie Foster defends that title against Stephen Fulton. You're going to have the WBC Interim Championship in the middleweight division that's going to be on this, as you're going to have Jesus Ramos Jr. going up against Shane Mosley Jr. Those are the four fights that they have on the pay-per-view schedule, right? You're going to have even more that's off pay-per-view that, some of those fights that were originally scheduled for October 25th in Las Vegas, they're moving them to this December 6th card in San Antonio, Texas. So this fight card is stacked. It's stacked, man. It's stacked. And I don't know how. Actually, I might know how. Given some situations that's going on right now, I might make a bike call it audible. I might call it audible and see about getting over to to San Antonio, Texas. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. But I mean, I just said, what's going on as far as like that particular fight card. We have I think it's like a conference call of sorts scheduled for later this week that involves the fighters on that undercard. So it's going to be a lot to kind of like decipher and get ready for. A number of people are talking about that fight between O'Shaquie Foster and Stephen Fulton. Both of those fighters were involved in or part of that Gillian Wallow show there, and they had a serious back and forth there on that show. So that, I'm telling you, that fight, do not sleep on that fight. And the thing about it is like, that is not even the co-feature. The co-feature is Erislandy Lara versus Janibek with the unification, right? So we got a number of things, or a number of fights that are really interesting on that fight card for December 6th, man. So I'm definitely looking forward to all of that. Okay. So that's mainly the thing there. Like I said, with the Ortiz versus Lubin, it's going to be a really, really interesting fight there for that WBC interim super welterweight title. You got Darius Fulton versus David Stevens on the card. You got Robin Safar versus Derek Miller on the card. Yeah, we were supposed to have the thing with Floyd Schofield and JoJo Diaz, but Floyd Schofield suffered a hand injury and it's going to be out of that fight. Now, Oscar De La Hoya did say that they're trying to see if they can still have JoJo Diaz on this card, but I don't know about all that. I say that he should, go ahead and have JoJo Diaz be, on the shelf there a little bit there, and you'll have what, I don't know, maybe another fight there with Regis Prograis or something. That was like a slept on fight before the fight happened, and then it still ended up being like a lot better than people thought it would have been. Even though JoJo lost by unanimous decision, he was tagging Regis on a number of occasions in that fight. So they're gonna still have something there in the works for JoJo Diaz, even though he's there with a record of 34 wins, 8 losses, and 1 draw. He did make a good account of himself there in that fight against Regis Prograis. So we'll see how that goes on that. You're gonna have Josh Edwards on this card against Zeno Voris. As I mentioned, there with David Stevens on this card, Joshua Edwards on this card, of course. their head coach or head trainer is Coach Ronnie Shields. So we're going to see if we can catch up with Coach there on Tuesday to talk about those two fights there in detail. You're going to have like a few other fights that are on that Golden Boy card for November 8th in Fort Worth, Texas. And it's going to be live on the zone. I did also mention there the Pro Box card on November 7th, headlined by Nicholas Foss versus Delonte Tiger Johnson in the welterweight division. That don't sleep on that fight. That's going to be a fight there where, at least from what I know from Nicholas Floss, he is like a rising contender within the WBO at welterweight, and then you're gonna have Tiger Johnson right there. So we got to see if Tiger Johnson is someone that could seriously contend there in the welterweight division, and this is the fight where we're gonna see how that goes. You feel me? A shout out topic. He says, "Hey, Lamont Rose Jr. versus Pitbull Cruz at 140 is an exciting fight. It's going to be an exciting fight. I think that few people are kind of like sleeping on Lamont Rose Jr. There when it comes to this, particularly with this fighting style. I'm like, Pitbull got to watch out. He got to watch out, man. This is not somebody that's like a Rolly Romero. Mm-mm. Nope. You're gonna fight someone that is, that's been a real decorated amateur fighter, top rated amateur fighter, going up here in the pros, built his record up in the pros, and only has like that close encounter there with Jamel Herring, back sometime back, and ever since then, he's been doing his thing. So that's the thing that they're gonna have to watch out for on that front when it comes to Isak Pitbull Cruz. Okay, so great card for December 6th, San Antonio, Texas. As I said, you're gonna have the conference call for the undercard that's scheduled for later this week. Z Patino says that, hey, I think Lamont can stop Pitbull. Watch out for that. Watch out for that. Because the thing about it is, man, I think it's something to the point where Lamont Rose Jr., if he's at the top of his game, he could really frustrate Pitbull and overwhelm him at times where Pitbull might not have an answer for what Lamont Rose Jr. could have out there, in the ring. So, hey, this might not be out of the question. My thing is that I don't see a instance where like Pitbull can like really overwhelm Lamont Rose Jr. At least right now, I don't see it. You know what I'm saying? I don't see it. Shout out to Timothy Taylor here. He says, if Erislandy Lara and Carlos Adames get all the 160-pound belts, will the PBC force Crawford to fight on the PBC to get a shot at undisputed? Good question. But here's my thing in reference to Terrence Allen Crawford. This is kind of like going off of some of the comments that have been made, by I guess people with around this camp or whatever it is. Regardless if it's Erislandy Lara, Carlos Adames, or Janibek Holland, I don't think any of those three fighters are enough to get Terrence Crawford to get back in the ring and have a fight in 2026. I think there will be two fighters. Well, some might say 1.5, but I would say two fighters that are out there that would get the interest of Terrence Crawford in 2026. One is coming off of an injury. The other, I've already mentioned in this podcast, because if that person could fight, hopefully that fight happens. If that person could have a fight with this guy on November, then why not have a fight against Terrence Allen Crawford? There you go. So if as the song goes, if it ain't about the money, Terrence ain't gonna be that much interested in it. All right. So I say as of right now, two potential fighters. And given the recent news of what could happen within what I would say 6 months, I would have said there would have been one other person that would really get an interest for Terrence Crawford. But again, that would be like an exhibition. So I would say one actual fight, two exhibitions. How about that? And I didn't even mention that other fighter that would be involved against Terrence Crawford in an exhibition that would probably get interest from Terrence Crawford. Said Z Pacino says Chris Eubank or Dimitri Bivol. First of all, we got to find out what's going on with Dimitri Bivol. Is he going to come back from his back injury and face one of his mandatories, or is he going to wait to see what's going on with David Benavidez and or Artur Beterbiev on November 22nd? So that's the one thing there. Chris Eubank has this thing where he's involved with the rematch against Conor Ben coming up for November 15th. After that, I don't know, man, because ain't Chris Eubank and Terrence Crawford, don't they both have the same trainer? I mean, so we'll have to see how that goes there on that. Topic says Matchroom has few solid 154 pounders on their roster. With you got Jalil Hackett there, you got Amari Jones there, you got Nishant Dev or Amari Jones, something like that, Nishant Dev or whatever it is, right? Yeah, Nishant Dev, I think had a fight there in Orlando this yesterday. And what else they had? They had the thing there with Jones too. So hey, I mean, hey, they do have a few interesting fighters out there, but for me, I think we got to see what's going to be up there for for Jalil Hackett. Of course, I've talked with uh, his father there, Bernard Hackett, as far as like pushing for a fight between Jalil Hackett and the WBO champion at 154 pounds there in Xander Zayas. But outside of that, with Omari Jones, had his fourth fight over there in Orlando yesterday. So, we got to see how that goes there on that front. All right. He says Bivol has put on some weight there while recovering from back surgery. Ooh. Well, I guess we got to see when that'll probably have some more time there for Dimitri Bivol to get back in the ring. But they're gonna have to make some decision on these other titles. He already gave up the WBC belt. That's why David Benavidez is currently the WBC champion. They're in the light heavyweight division. Now you got these other belts there, the IBF, the WBO, the WBA. As I mentioned, Bivol has like one of those Mandos that could be out there for one of the titles that he has, right? So what is Dimitri Bivol going to do? Is he going to just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and face Michael Leifert when I get back? Or is he going to wait out to see what's going on with Benavidez or Artur Beterbiev after they have their fights on November 22nd? Of course, you got Benavidez there in the main event, right? And after that, if he is able to defeat Anthony Yard, then maybe we could see if they could have that fight be for undisputed. Or you're gonna see what happens with Artur Beterbiev, as he has a fight there on that card for November 22nd, right? And if he gets through that fight, then we'll see what goes on from that. But other than that, man, I have not much to say about Dimitri Bivol because one, you say that, I got this here where I'm not gonna have the rematch with Beterbiev, and now you ain't even gonna have fight with David Benavidez, and so now you got this. And as far as I know, we had something there where Beterbiev might not be on this card for November 22nd. I got to see something what goes on. All right, I had to see what happened with all that. Thought we were supposed to have Beterbiev on that fight card. I guess it got scrapped once again. Oh goodness. Have another question here on here. Hey, shout out to all y'all, man. Hey, if y'all can't hit the like button, hit the share button. To share, show support here for the Boxing Source podcast and the Boxing Source. There, right? So you had like another question here on this, and they asked, "Who is Canelo going to fight in May 2026?" Um, One, I don't think he's going to be fighting in May 2026. I think, given his injury, I think he's going to be out for a good a little bit longer. Probably going to fight in September of 2026. And I mentioned one of the fighters that he could be facing, and that is Terrence Allen Crawford in a rematch for the undisputed super middleweight championships. Outside of that, I can't really give you another person that Canelo could fight in 2026, unless it say, oh, let's see if he could just have this, one off, so to speak, coming off an injury, and then from that, we'll see. But the thing about it is, it's Canelo Alvarez. So, given, okay, how much are they gonna, give for Canelo to face just about anybody? One, it's Canelo, so at least on his end, it doesn't matter who the opponent is. People are going to still be there to see Canelo regardless, right? So whether it's Terrence Crawford or anybody else, people are still going to be interested because it's Canelo Alvarez. But May, I don't see Canelo fighting in May unless like this whole thing with the recovery went better than they expected. But I was thinking that he wouldn't get back in the ring until September of next year. So we'll see how that thing is. So follow up, he asked, who is going to replace Canelo for that Cinco de Mayo date? The push is trying to get David Benavidez to be the guy to do that. Going from previous conversations, that was going to be the plan, but we'll see. That was when Benavidez was involved with Samson Lukowicz. Now it doesn't look like those two are working together anymore. So you got David Benavidez that's involved with this thing with Riyadh season. We could see if Riyadh season or Ring has another event during that time frame. We'll see how that goes. So if that's the case, like I said, David Benavidez, if he takes care of business against Anthony Yard November 22nd, then you could see him there during that weekend for Cinco de Mayo, because it looks like they're trying to see if they could build him to be the next Mexican star there to fight on Cinco de Mayo. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Canelo, as far as like being out there for May, nah, I don't see it. I don't see it. One other thing here, I wanted to talk about before I'm able to roll out, so to speak, there was I wanted to touch on this thing for what could happen in the ring later on down the line. So there was something posted or stated by folks over there at Ring Magazine that we could potentially have Emmanuel Deppy, John Pacquiao going up against Floyd Troy. You know what? I ain't even gonna say his real last name. Floyd Mayweather Jr. All right, and I'm like, wait a minute, wait, hold on. First off, so the whole little announcement about Floyd Mayweather facing Mike Tyson that's supposed to be for 2026. What happened with all that? That's number one. Number two, it was rumored that Manny Pacquiao could be in another fight against the WBA welterweight champion, Rolando Rolly Romero. So those two fights, what happened with those two fights? What happened with those? So we're going to just go ahead and scrap both of those, and then see about having this fight here between Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. Another fight, whether it's exhibition or not. We're gonna see about having another fight. Well, I'm like, why should we go through this? It's been over 10 years since that first fight happened there where Floyd Mayweather was able to get the win. Um, and if they go forward with this, then what does that say as far as like boxing is concerned, and as far as like overall interest from people outside of boxing, so to speak, right? Because the only reason why I would say that they would even have this as an idea is because they're trying to get to people that aren't necessarily watching boxing every week or every other week or every month or all that type of stuff. They're looking at the whole super fight type thing, right? So with that being said, are people still interested in a fight between Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather? Yeah, we did see what happened with Manny Pacquiao against Mario Barrios on July 19th of this year. Yes, that fight ended up in a draw. Shouldn't have been a draw. Mario Barrios should have. I'm still real like disappointed in that because there should have been no way Mario Barrios should have had Manny Pacquiao even be competitive in that fight. But with that being said, that opened the door for, as I was mentioning earlier, a potential fight between Pacquiao and Rolly Romero for starters. And then after that, now we get this. So what's going to, how is this going to sort itself out? We'll see. We'll see. But with that, I, um, I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah, there would be a lot of money involved, but who knows? Ooh, looks like somebody has kind of gotten the idea of what I was talking about earlier with Terrence Crawford. Shout out to Timothy Taylor, man. Shout out to Timothy Taylor, man. Shout out to Timothy Taylor, bro. This question right here. What amount of money would Turkey have to pay Floyd Mayweather to come out of retirement and fight Terrence Crawford? You basically got to what I was talking about earlier. When I talked about Terrence Crawford and said who would be fighters that would actually have the interest of Terrence Crawford getting into the ring in 2026, I said Canelo Alvarez is one. I would say that Jake Paul, yeah, I mentioned him. Jake Paul would be number two, but Floyd Mayweather would be number three. Floyd Mayweather would be number three. And with this whole thing about Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather, that kind of like opens the door for this potentially happening, whether it's exhibition or not. It opens the door for that. Because if there's anything that like fight fans will be talking about, you have someone in Terrence Crawford that just had the win over Canelo Alvarez and basically made that statement that says he is the best fighter of this era. The best fighter of the previous era is Floyd Mayweather. So whether it's exhibition or not, Floyd Mayweather, Terrence Crawford, best of one era, best of another era, being in the ring together, there you go. There's the idea. So if you say what amount of money would it take, hey, as far as like Floyd, I don't forgot like how much he was paid initially for his first fight with Manny Pacquiao, but he got paid serious bread for that fight. I think it was like an upwards of 400 million for that fight against Manny Pacquiao. You know what I'm saying? But if he had the fight with Crawford, yeah, like I said, yeah, Mayweather versus Crawford. Listen, even with Floyd being where he's at right now, what I say, he was up there around like 40, or like 48 almost, right? He's like 48, ain't he? But you got, Terrence Crawford like getting close to 40. So I mean, there you go. Hey, if you could have Jake Paul fight Mike Tyson, then hey, why not? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Floyd is, 48 years old. And You got Terrence Crawford there, 10 years younger there at 38. So, listen, like I said, I'm just putting the idea out there. All right, putting it out there. You know what I mean? And as you said, yeah, Floyd never looked bad in the ring. He has not skipped anything when it comes to preparing for fights. Of course, he's been like one of those gym rats, as they say. So he didn't play around when it came to preparing for a fight, and he takes care of his body 100%. So if there was anything that like would kind of like generate like some interest as far as like, ooh, that would be something right there. The best of one era versus the best of another era. Floyd Mayweather versus Terrence Crawford. Listen, these ideas, like who would have thought last year we would see Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson? We could see something like that. What makes us not be able to see Floyd Mayweather versus Terrence Crawford? Whether it's like who like say like undefeated versus undefeated, whether it's exhibition or not, undefeated versus undefeated, you can still have something like that. So again, if it's Terrence Crawford, if there's anything that would have him get back in the ring in 2026, it would be a rematch with Canelo. It would be a potential exhibition with Jake Paul. I'm throwing that out there. And a potential fight with Floyd Mayweather Jr. You know what I'm saying? As here, if Floyd Mayweather beat Terrence Crawford, would that put him past Ali? If they actually had a fight and him at 48 years old being able to defeat Terrence Crawford, you would have to put him almost like close to number one all time. But I just don't think it would be like an actual fight when it comes to Terrence Crawford. I just don't think so. I don't think that would happen. I don't. If it's Floyd Mayweather against Crawford, I think it's an exhibition. If it's Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao, then maybe you would have that be actually registered as a fight. But Mayweather versus Crawford, yeah, I think that would be an exhibition, regardless. You know what I'm saying? So there you go. So that's all I got, man. There within an hour or so here with the Boxing Source podcast. Big ups for everyone that's able to participate here on the live chat. Shout out to those that's been watching live, and also to those that'll be listening via replay, whether it's through YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, or listen via audio, podcast, whatever podcast platform you use. You'll be able to hear what I've been saying in reference to a number of these topics. Like I said, we'll try to have a few things in the works here for the channel. We have our scheduled show for Tuesday with Coach Ronnie Shields. Wednesday with the midweek report, we're going to have Stanford graduate Dante Kirkman as a special guest. That'll be on for Wednesday. And we're going to see about, scheduling some more interviews later on down the line here for this week. And then hopefully we get some more news in reference to the event that's on Friday, November 14th at the Casilla Center in Miami, Florida. Like I said, insurance. So with all of that, I thank everyone being able to take part here in this particular edition of the Boxing Source podcast. And I will catch y'all later. Peace out.